In our presentation, we will be discussing the aspects of using recycled material within a landscape. We will discuss why using recycled materials should be incorporated into landscape design, what can be used as recycled material, why there is an increasing demand for it, and some benefits and negative aspects. We will be sharing some history on how incorporating recycled materials into landscapes started, as well as the techniques and applications used by landscapers. Finally, we will share some wonderful examples of what successful landscape designs that have incorporated recycled materials look like. Often when you think you're at the end of something, you're at the beginning of something else. Quote by Fred Rogers.
In the broadest sense, recycling is the reuse of a previously used material. This philosophy is carried on in landscaping as the reusing of the site's materials. This can take on many shapes depending on what was on the site previously and is inherently adaptive as a result. By using the materials that are found on site, we can reduce the cost of transporting materials and the cost of labor for hauling those materials. The process is eco-friendly as you aren't adding any waste to a junkyard. When it comes to plants, you're keeping a genetically proven specimen alive and on the site where it's previously shown to have thrived. Soils and the microfauna therein are kept on site, so if you have a soil that has an established ecosystem in it and you mix out any new soils you bring in, the beneficial bacteria and insects in the soil can spread faster, resulting in a quicker turnaround. A building site can be reused in one way or another. Old trees can be processed through a wood chipper and used as a wood mulch. Rainwater can be captured and used to water the site. Plants can be reused or otherwise composted. One of the most common things to be reused on a site is soil, as it can be reused in new beds or in construction. Ultimately, the only thing that hinders a material's recyclability is the practicality of the recycling process itself.
In 2012, 14.3 million tons of garbage was dumped into landfills from Canadian households. By reusing materials in landscaping, it will lower the amount of garbage that is piling up in our landfills, lower the risk of toxins being released into the atmosphere, such as dioxin, and can lower our air pollution, which can create many other issues.
There are many potential benefits of using recycled materials in the landscape. Lower cost for materials that can be recycled, and materials you don't have to buy. Lower footprint, as you aren't manufacturing and transporting new materials to a site, you are effectively cutting down the carbon footprint of the project. And as a selling point, a site built with recycled materials can be a selling point to eco-friendly customers. There are, however, drawbacks with recycled materials, including it is time intensive. Any materials that are collected from the site must be processed in some way or another to make them suitable for construction. This process can be time intensive depending on the amount of materials collected. Cost. Some materials may require special equipment or personnel in order to be processed and may take time to process correctly, resulting in additional costs down the line. Damage. Some materials could be damaged in some form, and the flaw may not be immediately visible and could lead to material not performing as expected in the long run, leading to added costs down the line.
Over the years, the concept of sustainability has been increasing in awareness and popularity. One great example of a historical figure that we found is Ian McHarg. Ian McHarg was a Scottish landscape architect living from November 20th, 1920 until March 5th, 2001. He started the landscape architecture program at the University of Pennsylvania in the United States. He wrote a book in 1969 called Design with Nature, which started the concept of ecological planning. He wanted people to work closer to nature in their approach to gardening. Design with Nature is still one of the most widely regarded books on landscape architecture and land planning. So the next slide I'll be talking about is techniques. One example of technique is permeable paving. So permeable paving can capture stormwater runoff and replenish the groundwater supply. Another example is drought-tolerant plants. Drought-tolerant plants can be a huge asset due to the fact that they use less water than the other plants. And an example of one could be a coneflower. If you use different watering zones in your irrigation system, it can also be very beneficial due to the fact that if you keep the same plants that require the same amount of water in an area, You can design the irrigation system accordingly, avoiding overwatering or underwatering. And you can avoid these because these select the specific nozzles needed for that area. Repurposing salvage items can also be useful in that you utilize old material for planters or other creative ideas that you may have. Another great technique is passive solar architecture. If you use passive solar architecture, you can use the sun's energy to heat and cool your home in addition to many other uses. And then image 16 is an example of permeable paving, and in this case I chose gravel. And then image 17 is an image of a coneflower, and like I mentioned before, it is a great drought-tolerant plant.
Applications for recycled materials in the landscape include residential areas, public spaces, and urban environments within inner cities. Applications continued. Wood pallets, as well as old doors and windows, are often used as planters, fencing, or as ornamental rustic features in the garden. Recycled wood can be salvaged from places like old buildings and shipping materials, and restored for a variety of residential uses, including decking, seating, and fences. Recycled concrete is usually broken or misshapen. It is often used for walkways, pathways, or is crushed up and used as gravel or in an asphalt blend. Glass is often crushed or grated and can be an attractive ground cover or mulch. Rubber, most often from tires, and ground up plastics are more mulching alternatives or can be compressed into surface mats. Any container has potential to be a planter if it has the right look or feel for your landscape design. Salvaged metals, often steel, tin, and aluminum, can be used for fencing or planters as well. Paper and cardboard are often used under mulches as a natural defense against weeds. Upcycling is a term used meaning reuse, discard objects or material in such a way as to create a product of higher quality or value than the original, also known as one man's trash is another man's treasure.
The next slide I'll be talking about is legislation. There are certain legislations that should be reviewed before any work with recycled material is done. By following these legislations, it ensures safe, specialized landscapes in our communities. These are Environmental Protection and Enhancement Act and Alberta Waste and Recycling Act. The City of Calgary and the City of Edmonton bylaws should also be reviewed for any rules and regulation that might be followed. And that goes for any municipal district that you may be landscaping in.
Urban Bloom in Shanghai is a great example of recycled materials in an urban landscape. Recycled timber pallets are used as modular building blocks stacked to form seating and visual interest. The installation is designed on one side to resemble hilly topography. Potted plants are placed around part of the park's perimeter to create a garden aesthetic. Plastic spheres are tied to poles and are filled with foliage in a sculptural take on trees. Repurposed materials were predominantly used as part of the designer's desire to promote sustainable concepts. The Luhing Garden at the Pacific Cannery Lofts in Oakland, California is an excellent example of recycled materials as architecture within a garden. The landscape architect mined elements from the cannery structure, including abandoned machinery for repurposing in the new gardens. The recycled tumbled glass riverbed in the dining room court and stone columns in the Luhing Garden add to the historic character. Handcrafted site furnishings made from FSC-certified wood, concrete, steel, and glass were designed by the landscape architect and crafted by Miller Company Landscape Architects in-house installation team. This vineyard retreat in the Napa Valley of California is a great example of a site's impervious surfaces. This site's impervious surfaces were reduced by almost 70% with gravel paths and drought-tolerant planting. Rainfall picks up contaminants from impervious surfaces such as asphalt and concrete streets, driveways, and other pathways, which further contribute to water pollution. In comparison, increasing a site's permeable surfaces allows for natural filtration and reduces the costs associated with adding stormwater management systems. Permeable surfaces increase evapotranspiration, filtration, and infiltration, and mitigate elevated water temperatures caused by contact with impervious surfaces. Permeable surfaces mitigate and control stormwater runoff by allowing water to pass through the underlying soils. This kind of natural filtration process is the most effective way of limiting water contaminants and pollutants. The Sweetwater Spectrum Residential Community for Adults with Autism Spectrum Disorder uses lumber for fences and benches that is FCS certified. Wood has a carbon footprint 75% less than common building materials like concrete or steel and can be a renewable, resource-efficient material in landscape design. The Sustainable Sites Initiative recommends building with certified sustainably harvested woods, and recycled plastic or composite lumber to preserve forests, which are critical to sequestering greenhouse gas emissions and extend the life of useful materials. Instead of using increasingly scarce virgin woods, particularly from tropical hardwoods, homeowners can use reclaimed woods from existing structures and avoid sending that material to the landfill. Recycled wood can be salvaged from places like old buildings and shipping materials and restored for a variety of residential uses, including decking, seating, and fences. From landfill to park. World-renowned Mount Trashmore Park encompasses 165 acres and is comprised of 2 man-made mountains, 2 lakes, 2 playgrounds, a skate park, and a vert ramp with multi-use paths. The main mountain, Mount Trashmore, now 60 feet in height and 800 feet long, was created by compacting layers of solid waste and clean soil. Recognized for its environmental feat, this former landfill features a water-wise garden that boasts xeriscaping, which requires minimal water. The site was covered with topsoil and planted with grass, but encountered issues after construction. High levels of methane gas were detected in nearby homes, and some were evacuated for several years. Pipes were built to release the gas, and a methane-fueled flame burned for several years at the site.
In conclusion, we hope that you have learned the importance of the value of using recycled material in landscaping. We hope that you take this and use it as a stepping stone for any further work you may do with landscape design. We believe that it is a more sustainable option in specialized landscaping that will lead the way to a healthier way of living.